Hello, listener, and welcome to Book 3, Chapter 7 of Bite-Sized Tales, the audio flash fiction podcast. In today's story, we feature a guest author, fan of the show, Pete. In this story, as a wizard faces death, he plots his revenge.
The Chronomancer's Creation. Written by Pete, read by Dot Moore. He betrayed me. I felt the power flows feeding my abilities cut one by one. The force opposing me magnified. Their rituals must be coming from the sites, places where ley lines crossed. Then he came. I probably made other mistakes, but allowing him to live after refusing to serve me was the greatest. I let all my wrath, all my regret, and all my heart fuel my spells. But now I stood alone against a champion supported by the power channeled to him from others' rituals. As I felt the balance shift and saw my end imminent, I started to use less power against him and wove more of it into myself. This would not be the end. I felt the blade bite, white-hot pain searing my body. There would be revenge. Death doesn't have to be the end if you have the knowledge, the power, and the will. It has been generations, but I have the will. Life without a body is hard. I knew what I was doing, but I was cut off from much of my power and making a move I hadn't prepared. In haste, lest they capture my essence and destroy me utterly or imprison me for a significant chunk of eternity, I fled into the void without proper preparation. There are things that feed on the energy of the formless. Suddenly I went from being a sorcerer queen on the verge of a final victory to the smallest of fish in a very big and shark-infested ocean. Lifetimes were spent hiding, hunting when I could, trying to gather some measure of power. Eventually, I could dedicate some of my time and efforts to tracking him down. His body had died long since, but he lived on. For a time, life after lifetime, I could only watch, at first from afar, and then closer and closer. He, be it by choice or through ignorance, forgoed the simple expedients of extending his life or taking a new body. He was reincarnating time and again. Starting afresh, the magic was bound to his essence, but the knowledge wasn't. Over many lifetimes, he was lessened, step by step. When I gathered the power to act, he was a crank pseudoscientist, tolerated because of his wealth, but sneered at behind closed doors. His detractors didn't seem to realize that he was in fact able to do the things they scornfully dismissed as impossible. His bizarre steam and clockwork mechanisms may have had some utility, but could not suffice to activate his automatons. The spark of magic he gave them, though, that weak thread of synthetic life he wove into his mathematics, sufficed to animate them. He devoted himself to his automatons so thoroughly he had no close friends, and his acquaintances were not keen to become too closely acquainted with him. So, when he desired an apprentice, it quickly became apparent he would need to acquire a young child and teach them. No school would teach them the mathematics or engineering he required, nor would any school fail to point out the impossibility of doing what he was doing, without the use of magic, that is. I followed the automaton he sent out to fetch a child. I don't know if the thing was reacting to my power or choosing her for some convoluted reason of its own. The fair young girl with long curling locks would be my vessel as I infiltrated his sanctum. For now, she would shield me from his gaze. He would never know that the two of us looked out from her soft brown eyes. It may be that my presence left some slight effect on her, but I did not steal her body. I merely hid in it. I do not have the patience to pretend to be an innocent. Besides, I wanted the freedom to move freely unseen and unfettered by such trivia as walls, while I decided exactly what form my vengeance would take. She was a clever girl and learned well. Indeed, she was better with clockwork mechanisms and mathematics than I was, though utterly without a spark of the gift. As he became impatient at her inability to make automatons, I took to weaving threads of my magic through her math. A little nudge here and there, and her choices of metal and motifs made it easier. I learned with her and came to appreciate the potential of this blending of magic and machine. I even came to admire the child's skill. I momentarily thought to take her body for my own, but reconsidered. It's true that many still associate fair with good, and I was not about to dissuade them of the folly of that notion as preferable ideas occurred to me. In time, she became more comfortable with the results of my help, accepting the evidence of her eyes over the protestations of her brain and no longer complaining that the math was flawed or that there was no reason to use the variety of alloys. Around this time, I started feeding her, drip by drip, the plans for an increasingly complex automaton. Designs, arcane geometry, and esoteric alloys filled her dreams. Soon she was sketching and designing, refining the ideas I planted like seeds. Exacting alloys of brass, bronze, and steel, quenched and coated in strange fluids, precise shapes of gold and silver with arcane engravings and geometric perfection. Her masterwork was taking shape, exactly according to plan. At the next conjunction, the time would be ripe. Finally, the night came. I would have to briefly control her actions, but she would come to no harm. As her master became increasingly frustrated by the futile quest I had set him upon, I took her body for a time. The specific markings, the exact rituals and invocations would be too difficult for her otherwise. As the stars aligned exactly, the engravings shimmered with an internal light that the most skilled engineer could not have explained. She collapsed as I released her. Using my new mechanical body, I gently laid her on a couch and erased the marks that might give someone with talent of their own too much insight into the ritual we performed. With the gentlest hum and the slightest tick of clockwork, I entered his laboratory. Now it was his turn to be betrayed. Author's notes. The idea for this story came from a series of prompts Dot posted, one showing a clockwork robot with a young girl. I had ideas about a story they could tell, but I was too busy and didn't keep up with the new pictures. I never found the time to write the story that the pictures had told, and I don't know how some of those pictures fit into the idea I had. This story is inspired by those ideas, though it doesn't follow the full progression. Just wanted to give a quick shout out. Thank you so much, Pete, for being our first guest writer for Bite-Sized Tales. You have been a devout follower of the show, and your support and feedback is incredibly important to us, and we value it every single week that, we get our little quote-unquote Pete back, as we have started to call it, between Chris, Wayne, and myself. Thank you to the rest of our listeners, and hope you enjoyed.
If you are interested in being considered as a guest author on Bite-Sized Tales, please visit our website, bitesizedtales.com. There you can message us about your idea. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. For more information about our authors, please visit bitesizedtales.com. We look forward to reading to you next time.